One more time, fool.
Hey, if you like what you see, subscribe, like, and share.
In the DMV and we work. The podcast is cool, but they not like us. Talking real DC, so what's up? Hey.
What's going on, good people? And welcome to Foote's Tuesday. Foote's Tuesday is a podcast that I created once I realized that the homies was coming over every Tuesday to partake in some adult libations as we get lit and we talk shit about basketball. Yo, and occasionally we have a guest. But before I tell you about who's here on the south side of Washington, D.C., they're sitting over there in the big chair, let me salute the company that's sponsoring this particular podcast, All Stars Investments. Kobe Sullivan has been hosting basketball tournaments and giving back to the community since 2019. So, hey, Kobe. Yes, sir. And now, from Spingarn High School, Howard Tinker. Hey! Tinker, first of all, thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for
Man.
me. Thanks for having me.
Let me tell you something. You are a big part of this show, and you don't even know this.
Okay.
You got to think about it. My resume ain't as lengthy as your resume. Mm-hmm. So when I go out here and I start talking to you legends, and that's in real life, when I start talking to you legends, basketball legends of DC, you know, you guys give me the good political answer. Yeah, I'll be there. I got you, Foots.
Right.
So I started getting to the point where I was like, well, maybe I won't be able to do this podcast because they aren't really responding like I want them to respond. But you, on your own, hit my phone and you were like, Foots, I got you.
Yeah.
And let me tell you what that did. That energized me. That gave me a certain amount of confidence. And I said, man, we may have something here.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. You know, just speaking on that, Foots, you know, a lot of guys, you know, if they haven't heard of something, you know, and you got a little name or whatever, you know, they might tend to shy away from it. But how I was looking at it, you know, another black man out here, you know, trying to do his thing and get started. Because you always can get people once something blows up.
Indeed.
So, you know, when I thought about it, I said, man, you know what, man has always been a gentleman, good man, trying to do something positive. I'm come on through.
That's so dope, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I step out here every day being me, man, and I hope people pick that up, you know.
Yeah.
But we ain't talking about me right now.
Okay.
We talking about Howard Tinker. So
right.
what I want you to do is I want you to start off with the Jim Calhoun story.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah. My senior year, I was recruited by several Division I schools. At that time, he was at Northeastern University.
Okay.
Division I school, but they wasn't a well-known Division I school.
Okay.
People didn't know at the time they were recruiting me. Maybe the nation didn't know that they had been to 3 straight NCAA tournaments, which means that they, in their conference, they won it every year, and you know, got into the tournaments. That's a big deal in college.
Right.
You know, going to the top 64, you know, teams in the whole country. And actually, my freshman year, I'm going a little bit further. My freshman year, at the time, we were ranked 19th in the whole nation.
Gotcha.
But anyway, going back to the Calhoun story, I had gave the University of South Carolina a verbal commitment.
Gotcha.
You know, I was looking a little ahead. I knew more about the SEC. You know, the colleges were more common to me. University of South Carolina, Arkansas, Vanderbilt,
basketball,
Kentucky.
Right.
So, you know, I was like, okay, that's where I want to go. And they were talking like, okay, by at least your sophomore year, you know, you'll be in the starting lineup.
Indeed.
The Calhoun, once I took his visit first, because I was going to visit Northeastern and then University of South Carolina. So I visited with Calhoun. He came to my home first. before I went to see the school.
The man came.
And yeah, he walked in, man, and that's what impressed me. Because none of the other coaches decided to come in my hood. Like, and you know, DC was the murder capital.
Indeed.
In the 80s. So here come this 6'5" tall white man walking through my hood. And you know, I had a pretty decent basketball reputation.
But so at that time, they understand location, they understand what's going on in the city. But if they want you, they coming to get you.
Yeah, yeah. And depending on the coach, you know, like if you're let's see, I mean, Calhoun's a Hall of Famer now.
Indeed.
But let's just say if you're maybe Coach K or Dean Smith,
right.
he didn't have to come to your hood.
Right.
So, but I respect the fact that the guy came, you know, in my hood and sat with my mom's, took the time out. He also came to my high school, and he was telling me the story of the late Reggie Lewis. Rest in peace to Reggie Lewis.
True.
Yeah, he was telling me he was telling me about his recruiting skills and how he recognizes talent that most don't see at times. And so he went on to say, you know, well, he was like, I was looking at Reggie Lewis. You know, he said I wouldn't have had a chance at the other guys, which was Reggie Lewis and David Wingate, who were top 25 players in the country. So he said, I noticed this kid that came off the bench for them. He was like the 6th or 7th man. And he said he would only play about 6-7 minutes a game. He said, but in them 6-7 minutes a game, this guy he said, this guy's going to be something if I can get him here.
Right.
And as we all know, I mean, you know, much respect to you know, Reggie Lewis. I mean, to David Wingate and Reggie Williams, but they were more highly recruited than him. But you saw who became the better pro, you know, which was Reggie Lewis. You know what I mean? Because I don't even think, while those guys both had, you know, really great careers, neither one of them made an all-star team.
Gotcha.
Reggie Lewis was an all-star, you know,
sure.
once he got to the Celtics. So the long story short, in my mind, I'm thinking like, okay, if he give me that story, he sees something, you know, in me, like, you know, because I wasn't a top 50 guy in high school, in the nation and things like that. I was, you know, wanted.
How does that happen though? Like a guy like me, you know, who went to PG. Oh, don't get me wrong, I'm proud of my 2-year PG career.
Yeah.
But what does that do to you as a guy who's played on a high level, and you get recruited on a high level, and you actually get out there and start bumping with dudes that bump the same way you do? I mean.
Yeah. Well, it's you know, I don't want to say. Well, it's a circuit, right? So to get in that realm of those big names, you know, back then you had Nike camp, 5-star was huge, and you know
that's all AAU.
Well, yeah, AAU was a little different for us back then.
Okay.
You know, you had to be selected. Anybody can just put an AAU team together now. But back then, to answer your question about how you get ranked, you have to be seen by the basketball guys or guards in that business. And if you go to one of those camps and you have a great camp, you'll look at a publication, you're like, I'm the 49th player, I'm the 70th best player in the nation. Yeah, so I didn't wasn't in any of those camps either. I went to a camp. It was called the BC All Star Camps, and it was some pretty decent guys down there, and because it was a guy that actually was a point guard. I want to say, I forget his name, but he was going to the University of Maryland.
Gotcha.
And I was proud of myself. I went down there and I made the All Star team out of all the campers down there. So even though I didn't touch the Adidas camp, the Nike and things of that nature, I kind of put myself on a recruiting map with that.
Right.
Not nationwide, but you know, as far as colleges. And like I said, at the end of the season, you know, I had one really good season. I played in the preliminary All-Star game to the Capital Classic. Like you have the Capital Classic, which they call the big game.
Indeed.
But I played in the All-Star game prior to Capital Classic.
With who? Who was on that particular team? On that team?
A lot of the guys I can't remember. I know Everett Robinson from Coolidge High School was one of the guys. It was a really good guard out in Maryland that played on the opposing team named Mike White.
Okay.
He's pretty known in the basketball arena. But I don't remember the whole roster because it was the local All-Stars in that game that we played. It was an All-Star game prior to the bigger All-Star game, and that was the year that J.R. Reed was the #1 player in the nation. So he played in the game, the All-Star game prior to me. I mean after me, after our game.
Look, let me tell you something, man. You talking about Dave Bing, Clarence Bootney.
You going to Spiingarn history now, huh?
You talking about even if you want to go to Baby Shaq, Sherman Douglas, of course, and I've only mentioned one person that came from that 31-and-0 basketball team that you played on. Katie always talking about something in the water as it pertains to PG County. What was going on? Well, what was going on at Spingarn?
Well, Spiingarn has always had a real good reputation as far as basketball, and I know that because we didn't do any recruiting, so to speak.
Right.
When you mention a Clarence Bootney Green, he's from uptown, right? We didn't recruit him. They didn't recruit him. It's just by chance he came over for a trial and fell in love with the school and the coaches, and he became who he became. But to go back to what you were saying, as a younger guy, right? I went to an elementary school where my coach at elementary was the assistant coach at Spiingarn High School.
Gotcha.
So as a young guy, he would always take me to the games when I was in elementary and in junior high. So I got familiar with Spiingarn High School ball, and some of the older guys around my neighborhood would play. And these were guys that I looked up to. And so by the time I got to high school, I was like, okay, because I really supposed to went to McKinley Tech. But again, that assistant coach, that head coach in elementary that actually taught me everything, he made me come to Spiingarn. Because I was supposed to go to McKinley Tech. I remember they were in my 9th grade year, they were recruiting me and David Butler.
Right.
The guy that went on to play Coolidge and then UNLV. So they had me and David Butler at McKinley Tech.
Right.
As trying to get us to join their summer league team as 10th graders and eventually go to their school. But I actually had a intervention where I went to Spiingarn instead.
Well, which turned out to be probably the best decision ever.
Yes and no for me. Yes and no for me.
Oh my God! Yes and no.
Yeah, only. Well, I mean, listen, I wouldn't trade those experiences for anything.
Right.
Because of the relationships and friends that I made.
Indeed, I got you.
Basketball wise, because if I went to Tech, I think I would have been starting by my 11th grade year. Spiingarn, we were really guard heavy.
Right.
I mean, and we had guys on the 3rd team could start for other schools in the city.
We need some names.
Well,
what are you talking about?
I don't want to diss any high schools at that time, but let's just say that year we won 31-0, right?
Yeah.
What year was this?
That was 1985. That we went 31-0. We actually visited the White House. That's something I thought about. I thought about bringing, because you asked for some. Exactly, and so I thought about bringing that pictures when Ronald Reagan was the president. We had a picture, we got invited there. We took a picture with all our guys. So that's something, man, I'll always remember. But during that year, and not bragging, but it was just what it was.
That's what come on.
Like teams like at that time, 85, Roosevelt, Anacostia,
It's
Baloo,
the inner high.
yeah, which were all good teams, but we would beat those teams by like 30.
Sheesh.
Like it was a given.
Right.
Now the competition got a little thicker with Eastern, who had a really excellent team.
Okay.
Dunbar could have beat us and should have beaten us. Yeah, they should have beaten us one game at Dunbar.
Okay.
And Sherman Douglas got us out of there.
Oh, gotcha,
I mean,
gotcha.
he went, if I can, he went ape shit. Okay, up there. He was really clutch.
Uh-huh.
And we actually had another gentleman who actually, didn't play that much, but came in and got one of the biggest rebounds of the year. The coach normally teases him about it, and say he saved our undefeated season. And this was a gentleman coming off the bench. You might have heard him. His name is Erwin Pendergrass.
Oh, Pendergrass.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. That's my guy.
What your numbers look like, man? Come on, let's hit a stat line.
Well, my senior year, I don't remember exactly what my numbers were, because I was a point guard, and they didn't back then. They didn't let the point guards go crazy.
Right.
But I would say anywhere maybe about 15, 16 a game. I've had career highs of 34, 32. Things like that. To me, the bigger the game, that's what got my nuts up a little bit. Like when we played the Dunbars and the Coolidges and things like that.
And there's
so
a
I
couple dudes on those teams who you went at.
Yeah.
You
Man,
remember their names?
well, yeah, but you know what's, yeah.
It's okay.
No, I'm fine. Like, I mean, as a competitor, you go at everybody.
Okay.
And I want to shout out one guy, my 11th grade year. Again, the year we went 31-0, and this would help my confidence, right? At the time, our starting point guard, Melvin Middleton, he had got into with coach this particular game at Cardoza.
Yeah.
Earl Moore was the leading scorer in the inner high, and so my number was called. Like, listen, he's not playing at all today. It's going to be you, right? And so the challenge was like Earl Moore, like he's averaging 30 a game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't know what was his numbers, but I think I did a pretty good job, and that was my first time with my name in the paper. Okay. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. In the Washington Post, I think I finished with like 14 points, and that actually led us in scoring that particular day with Sherman. Sherman, everything was going crazy that day because that's when Sherman me and him had collided in practice, and he hurt his leg, so he wasn't even 100%.
Got you.
So he, that was because I think he averaged the same amount Earl that day. So that really what got myself going. Playing against one of the top guards in the country, and I let that segue into, next year, my senior year, I'm going crazy.
Let's go.
Yeah. So you know what I mean? That gave me the confidence. And one other thing, it's another picture that I could have brought. It's actually in my phone. One of my proud moments too, like going into my senior year. Which let me know I'm in the know, right? Yeah. Because we had an AAU team that they put together, and it had the top guards in the city. Sherman was there, Kirk Lee from Baltimore,
Indeed.
Earl Moore, and me and Mark Tillman was the only 11th graders on this team.
Okay.
Yeah. It was one of Perry Dozier's. He was All-American. In high school. He actually went to South Carolina, University of South Carolina, and just looking at all of those big names, and for them to pick me, they were like, okay, that made me feel like, okay, you're up next.
Yeah. Did you and Mark had a chance to lock up?
We never. That was the only time me and Mark played together. We didn't play Cardoza.
Okay.
In preseason scrimmages,
really?
or anything, but yeah. Me and Mark came out that same year, and he was actually the player of the year in the city 1986. I mean, he tore.
Mark was a problem.
Yeah, no, yeah, he tore things down. Gonzaga, yeah, Gonzaga. And he played with another boy that don't get too much recognition. He went on to play at Ohio State. I don't know if you guys heard of Perry Carter. That was his inside guy. He can flat out do it, man. Yeah. He don't get a lot of recognition. I don't hear people mention his name in DC, but believe me, Mark Tillman will tell you about him.
I used to really think I knew about basketball until recently. I sat in the bleachers with Mark.
Okay.
That man said, "Foote,
Yeah.
it's levels to this shit."
It is.
And he showed me some tape, some video, and I was like, Mark, it's levels to this shit.
Mark was probably. I mean, he's a good man. He knows the game. He was taught. He was taught well in high school.
He taught the bum over here how to play. He taught the bum. He played with them in the back in the day, the 35 and over. And
okay.
He played with that team. That was you asked me, that was a legendary team.
Yeah.
You talk about Mark Tillman. I think Jeff Baxter was on that team. Daryl Prue was on that team.
Sherman.
Yeah, Sherman was on that team.
Yeah,
and Junior Barrows was on that team.
Oh, you know what? I know exactly the team you talk. I thought that was the 40 and under league.
Probably.
But it could have been 35. No, they're excellent team.
Yeah.
Excellent team. Because first of all, you said levels to this.
Yeah.
And like when you segue into playing older, as an older guy, 35, 40, and 50.
Right.
Nobody can do what they used to, but the whole key is you have to be in shape, because the average guy that used to, don't forget about Jeff Baxter.
Oh, yeah.
Because he still can fit in his freaking Maryland uniform back then. That's not normal.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? The average guy, you look at me now, as a grown man, 54-year-old man, 235 pounds. Most guys played ball in college was guard. They about 200 pounds. To be still 170, that's crazy. You know what I mean? That's really not. You got to thank God for that DNA.
He moving good. You know?
But I was gonna say, those guys, as they got older, they had success because first of all they stayed in shape, and then when you get older like that, you need to get guys that play. To your point about the levels, play because you get 4 to 8 guys that actually played on a certain level. D1 ball, had some success themselves. Now the game becomes easier, and that's why you see what those guys win. Now you can get on the team and shoot 20 balls, you ain't gonna win. You understand what I'm saying? But you get 8 guys who all played together, and all they care about is winning. That's why they were so successful.
You gotta think about it. If you've played on a certain level, you ain't getting out on the basketball court to lose.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I'm not just gonna play with this person or that person. I mean, I get it. It took me listening to guys like you, listening to Mark, and so forth and so on to understand that. Listen, the reason why I play with these guys is because it's about that dub at the end of the day.
Yeah. And so it's that that narrative that people say, oh, they stacked the team.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Especially at this age.
Exactly.
Because see, it's no more, like the days at Urban Coalition, you could have not such a great team, but a couple of pieces, but you had the ability to take 5 ISOs in a row. Watch out. And you can do it yourself. But at this age, you can't. That doesn't work like that. Yeah. So playing with a guy like Sherman, he put those guys in their places and made the game easier. Everybody that I've talked to that played with Sherman, after I played with him, they'll be like, "Oh man, oh gosh, he makes the game so easy." And he, what I mean. So shout out to my man Sherman Douglas.
All day long. So real quick, DC rapid fire. Your favorite mystic?
Mystic? What's the girl? Della Dona?
Oh, you love Della Dona?
Yeah.
She a walking bucket.
Yes,
I
indeed.
get it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know her first name, but she can play, man.
Elena.
Yeah. Elena. Yes.
Your favorite wizard?
Can I go back to the Bullets?
All day long.
Because I don't even like that wizard name. But my favorite my favorite Bullets guy, first guy I fell in love with was Bobby Dandridge.
Oh yeah, Bobby D.
Yeah, Bobby Dandridge. Yeah.
What about him?
Well, I just like this game. He was smooth. You couldn't speed him up. And when you had premier guys that he went up against, the Dr. J's, Marcus, I think Marcus Johnson back in the day, who had bigger names, but when they ran up to this guy, he held his own and he won. You know, so much respect to him, and I just fell in love. That's why I wore actually number 10 in elementary because of Bobby Dandridge.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the history. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Also, who was the most influential person to your basketball career?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, I watched a lot of basketball, and the first guard that I fell in love with and tried to pattern my game, well, was Gus Johnson.
Yeah.
That played with the Seattle Supersonics.
Okay.
And I got familiar with him because them and the Wizards, the Bullets actually back then were battling. I was like, man, this dude, you know, because I started watching guys that actually played point guard.
Right.
And then later on, the most influential person was Isaiah Thomas. That was my idol. I tried my best to pattern my game after him, but that's a whole nother level there.
Yeah.
But shoot for the stars.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Like so, but I loved everything. I loved everything about him. His tenacity. He could do everything. And then he wasn't scared of nobody. He wasn't scared of nobody.
Yeah.
You see Isaiah Thomas in person, you be like, he's not even 6'1". You know what I mean? But he's a giant. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay. And last question. I'm gonna set him up. Watch me set him up. The greatest point guard to come out of DC.
Jesus.
You've been talking about him all day.
Yeah. No, that's another great question. Of course, it's subjective.
Yes.
Man, as far as I know, I can go back to. I would have to say probably Dave Bing.
Ooh.
Tune in to Foote Tuesdays for more.